This morning I want to tell you a story about a time where I was so tired, I was so exhausted that I literally almost died. I want you to raise your hand in here if you have ever been to a lock-in before. Anybody ever been to a lock-in? Okay, a few of you. I did 10 years of youth ministry before we planted this church. And when you're in youth ministry, you do lock-ins all of the time. If you've never been to a lock-in, it's pretty simple, it's pretty self-explanatory. You lock kids in and you don't let them sleep. Kids get there to the church at like 8 p.m. and you keep them up all night long. You do not let them go to bed, and you plan the night full of activities like sports and games, and maybe you go somewhere like laser tag or go-karts or wherever, and you keep them up all night long and you pump them full of sugar and donuts and pizza and energy drinks, and they are having the time of their life, and you're kind of hating your life. And all night long you have this fun, and then at 8 a.m. they finally get to go home, and they pass out and they sleep in on Sunday and they don't come to church, and you mess up their schedule for like 2 weeks because they stay up all night long. I mean, honestly, I hate lock-ins. I think people that like lock-ins are kind of psychopaths, okay? But I've had to do a lot of lock-ins in my life. I remember the year was 2010, and I was a college student, and not only did I attend college, but I worked for my college. And what I had to do is I had to go out and represent my college to other high school fairs and camps and retreats and things like that. I was a recruiter, and I had to get high school kids to come to my college. And so I remember the college came to me and my buddy Corbin. If you've been around here for a while, you've probably met Corbin, or you at least heard me talk about Corbin. My school comes to me and they say, hey, you and Corbin, this Friday, you're going to go up to Delaware, and you're going to go to a lock-in all night long with a bunch of middle schoolers and high schoolers, and you're going to try to convince them to go to our college. And so I said, okay, no problem, say less. And I wake up that morning, and it's Friday, I have classes at 8 a.m., and so all the other day I go through all my classes, and then later that day I have basketball practice. And then I eat dinner, and it's an early dinner because we got to hit the road. So we eat dinner around 4:30. And then me and Corbin get a van, and we drive all the way up to Delaware, like 5 or 6 hours. And when we get there, it's like 9 p.m. And I got to be real with you, like I'm tired, okay? Because I've lived the whole day, and normally I'm getting ready to go to bed. And I just drove all that way. When you drive, it just takes a lot out of you. And so I'm already tired, but we pull up to the scene, and these kids are wild. Like, they are ready to go. We got middle schoolers and high schoolers, and they're drinking all these drinks, and they're, taking all this candy in, and they're just off the wall. And we spend all night with these guys, playing with them and putting a bunch of energy and a bunch of effort into them and hyping the night up and making sure kids don't do anything dumb. And all night long we do this, and finally it gets to 8 a.m. and everyone is just dropping like flies, and parents are picking kids up and they're going home and they're sleeping. And I look at Corbin, and Corbin looks at me, and he says, hey Kevin, you think of what I'm thinking? And I'm like, well, I don't know, what are you thinking? He says, I'm thinking that we should drive home. And I said, you know what I'm thinking? I'm thinking that you should drive home, right? I think this is a great idea. Even though we've been up for 24 hours, I think that we can make it. I think that we can sleep in our own bed tonight. We should go home, and we should just, hit the road right now. And so I make Corbin a deal. I say, Corbin, here's the deal. You drive home, and I promise you that I will stay awake and talk to you and discuss things with you, and I'll keep you awake, and you'll keep me awake, and we'll go on this journey together. And he says, okay, that sounds great. So Corbin gets in the car, I get in the car, and he pulls out, and immediately, like I am knocked, right? It takes all of like 2 minutes before my eyes close and my body just shuts down. And I don't know how long we drove. I don't know if we drove for an hour or 2 hours or 4 hours. All I know is I got that good car sleep. And when I woke up, you ever fallen asleep in a car, right? You know how it is, like your face is on the window and you got drool just calm down. And I come up off of that window and I'm all, muggy and sweaty, and I'm wiping my face, and it all happens in 1 second. I'm very peaceful and coming out of my dreamlike state, and I look out the windshield. And we are on a 2-lane road, right? You got the double lines. We're on a 2-lane road, except we are in the other lane. And there's cars coming towards us. And more important than that, we were actually heading off of this lane, and we were heading towards the guardrail. And on the other side of the guardrail, there's this ditch with God knows anything in there, right? Alligators and things that I don't want to be a part of. And so our car is heading off of the road, and I look at it, and I'm surprisingly calm. And I look over at Corbin to see what he's doing, and no joke, my buddy Corbin is driving the car like this, and his head is down like this, and he is just breathing hard, knocked out. And you would think that I would say, hey, Corbin, gently grab the wheel, take control of the car, like calmly wake him up. But instead, I just woke up myself, and I see he's knocked out, and we're going off the road, and I say, Corbin, wake up, man, what are you doing? And he, turns the car, he swerves, and we almost flip, and we almost die, and he's yelling at me, and I'm yelling at him, and we're both laughing, and we're both kind of scared, and we are exhausted. Right? He is so tired, and I am so tired, and I can't keep him up, and he can't keep me up, but we have no other option but to keep going, and we are so exhausted, we're barely hanging on, and when we're so tired that we almost lose our lives. Now, I know that you've probably never done anything like that before, but I know that you know that feeling. The feeling of being tired, the feeling of being rested. I know a lot of you in here, and I know that a lot of you are exhausted. Some of you in here, you are exhausted when it comes to your kids, right? You got this newborn baby, and this dude does not sleep. Every 2 or 3 hours, constantly awake, and you are so tired. Maybe you have a toddler, right? And if you just say the word no, they're going to freak out and have a meltdown, and you got to battle that. Maybe you have a teenager, right? And you know the sass and the attitude and the kickback and the pushback every time you say anything. And you spend all day long just raising these kids. And finally, you get to the battles and you get them to bed, and you still got to do the dishes, right? You still got to do the laundry. You still got to clean the house. It's exhausting. Some of you in here, you are exhausted when it comes to your job because you are in a busy season right now. You are booked up for weeks, for months. You don't have a day off. You don't get the option to call in sick. Like, your career is exhausting. My wife is a school counselor, and they only have 2 or 3 weeks worth of school, and it feels like they have a year's worth of work before they get to those 2 or 3 weeks. Jonathan is a high school teacher, and he told me that he calls the month of May-cember, because it's December, but it feels as busy as it's May, but it's December, it feels as busy as December. He calls it May-cember. Like, some of you, your careers, your job, it is exhausting. Some of you in here, life is just throwing you punch after punch, and you are just exhausted with what's going on in your life. Like, some of you, your health is deteriorating, and you go to the doctor, and you have way more questions than you do answers. Right? And it feels like you finally get over something, but then this test shows actually it's not gone, or this came up, and now you got to deal with something entirely different. Some of you, you're trying to get ahead financially, you're trying to pay all these bills and get out of debt and save money, but it feels like one thing after another is just constantly breaking, and when it rains, it pours. Some of you in here, man, life has dealt you grief, and you have lost someone you loved. And before you could even get over it, it happens again, and it happens again, and it happens again. And everybody else is moving forward, but you are exhausted. We are exhausted driving the car of our life. And we have no other option but to keep going, but a lot of us, man, we are hanging on by a thread. Jesus says this in Matthew chapter 11, verse 28. He says, Then Jesus said, "Come to me, all of you who are weary and carry heavy burdens, and I will give you rest." When Jesus says that he's going to give us rest, it sounds good. It sounds really appealing, right? Like, I would really like that. But the truth is, I'm too busy, right? I got too much to do. My to-do list is way too long. And so it's cool that Jesus wants to give me rest. But I don't know that I will ever actually get to see that promise that he offers, because we are just so busy. We're so tired. We're so exhausted. This morning we are continuing the series called Asking for a Friend. And the question that we are answering this morning is, man, what is up with this whole rest thing? What is up with this whole Sabbath thing? Like, why does God create a Sabbath and demand that we rest? What is the big deal about resting? And I want to talk about all of that, but in order for you to understand any of it, I need you to understand one thing. It's going to kind of frame our thinking this morning and frame our time together. Listen, if you don't remember anything, remember this. Listen, you are best when you experience rest. You are at your best when you experience rest. If you got a Bible, we are going to be in the book of Mark this morning. Mark chapter 2, verse 23. And if you don't have a Bible, it's totally fine. We have the words here on the screen for you. But we say this every single week. If you don't have a Bible, no problem. Take one on us. There's a table outside. It's full of Bibles. And we always say the same thing. Take it. You don't have to ask us. You don't have to tell us. Just take it and read it. There's a Bible reading plan in there. Read it, and it'll change your life. In fact, we had to order new Bible reading plans because you guys took them all. And that's a great thing. It's a great problem to have. It's there for you. We want you to take them. We're going to be in the book of Mark chapter 2, verse 23. And if you are a note taker this morning, I want you to write this down. I want you to write down that God created the Sabbath. Check this out. In Mark 2:23, it says, one Sabbath day, as Jesus was walking through some grain fields, his disciples began breaking off heads of grain to eat. But the Pharisees said to Jesus, look, why are they breaking the law by harvesting grain on the Sabbath? Now, if you've never been to church before, you're probably wondering, like, what the heck is a Sabbath, right? And why can't I eat on a Sabbath? That sounds super lame. And I want to kind of break this down. The idea of a Sabbath, the word Sabbath, it basically means rest. It is a day of rest that God has commanded you and me, He's commanded His people from the very beginning to take a day and just rest. In the book of Exodus, when God is talking to the people, He gives them all of these commands. He gives them 10 commands. And in those commands, one of them is, hey, you need to remember the Sabbath day. It says in Exodus chapter 20, verse 9, it says, remember to observe the Sabbath day by keeping it holy. You have 6 days each week for your ordinary work, but the seventh day is a Sabbath day of rest dedicated to the Lord your God. On that day, no one in your household may do any work. This includes you, your sons, your daughters, your male and female servants, your livestock, and any foreigners living among you. I mean, this is pretty crazy when you think about all the things that God has commanded me and you to do. Right? You got the to-do list and the to-don't list. I don't want you to do this. I do want you to do that, right? Make sure that you never do this. You absolutely have to do this. We have this giant list of things God commands us to do. But one of those things, God looks at you and He says, hey, I want you to do nothing. I want you to take a day off. I want you to rest and be restored and be recharged. And not only does He command it, but He demonstrates it. In the very next verse of that Exodus passage, it says, for in 6 days the Lord made the heavens, the earth, the sea, and everything in them, but on the seventh day He rested. This is why the Lord blessed the Sabbath day and set it apart from the beginning, to be holy. You see, God creates everything in the world. He creates all things, me, you, animals, plants, animals, all this stuff, right? He creates it in 6 days, and on the seventh day, you know what He says? He says, I'm going to kick it. Right? I'm going to rest. I'm going to just chill. I'm going to just hang out. I am going to appreciate this Sabbath. And if God says, hey, I need to rest, how much more important is it that you should rest, that you should take a break, because you are at your best when you experience rest. And so now that you understand what a Sabbath is, I want to go back and I want to read this passage again, because you're going to see something happen that's pretty crazy. Check this out. In verse 23. It says one Sabbath day. So again, this is God that commanded all of His people, you can't do any work, right? On the Sabbath day, Jesus was walking through some grain fields, and His disciples began breaking off the heads of the grain to eat. But the Pharisees said to Jesus, look, why are they breaking the law by harvesting grain on the Sabbath? You know, when it came to approaching the Sabbath, there was really 2 ways of viewing it. The first way, people viewed it in a very legalistic way. Right? They said, hey, when God says don't work on the Sabbath, what does it mean to work? Like, we don't really know. So what they did was they created their own definitions of what work was. And they created all of these rules and these regulations. And the Bible never says any of them. But according to them, this was work. And their rules, they were kind of ridiculous. Like, one of their rules was if you tie a knot on the Sabbath, well, that's work. You can't do that. And so if you tie your shoe, well, you shouldn't have done that. You were working on the Sabbath. One of them was if you walk more than 750 yards past your house, then that's work. You can't do it. The 700 yards don't matter, but the 750, it really, really matters. And if you do that, you've broken the Sabbath. And so they really kind of like played police, and they made sure that no one was working on the Sabbath. The other way to view Sabbath was people were like, hey, I don't really care. There's no way I can keep up with these laws. There's no way I can keep up with these rules. And so my approach is, I'm just not going to care. I'm not going to appreciate Sabbath. I'm not going to engage and practice Sabbath. And so when Jesus is walking, he interacts with these Pharisees. And these Pharisees have a very legalistic approach towards Sabbath. And they say, whoa, 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 whoa. Jesus, what are you doing? You're walking on the Sabbath? You're picking grain on the Sabbath? You're eating on the Sabbath? Why are you guys breaking God's law? They're accusing Jesus of sin. And they're saying, you're out of step with God. And this is how Jesus responds. Check this out. It says, Mark 2:25, it says, Jesus said to them, haven't you ever read in the scriptures what David did when he and his companions were hungry? Look, I don't know if you guys know this about me. Actually, I think most people in here know this about me. But if you're new or maybe you haven't been coming for a while, maybe you don't know this, I just want to tell you right now. I love LeBron James, okay? I think that this dude is incredible. He's the greatest basketball player of all time. He's way better than Michael Jordan on and off the court. I mean, this guy is incredible, okay? He's the GOAT. I love him so much. I've never even met him, but I would take a bullet for that dude. He's incredible, okay? And anytime anyone mentions LeBron, you know what my ears do? I perk up. And then I go, what'd you say? What'd you say about my boy? Right? And anytime somebody, oh, he's not better than Jordan. No. I will fight tooth and nail for him, okay? Because you're playing with my guy. Okay? This is how I feel about LeBron. And hear me out. The same way that I love LeBron, these Jewish people, these Pharisees, they would have loved King David. Like, that was their guy. From the very beginning, King David was highly favored among God. And I mean, his whole life, the Bible says that he was a man after God's own heart. And so they studied the life of David. Whole books have been written by David and about David. Like, David was a really big deal. And so when Jesus says, hey, haven't you read what David did? Their ears are probably perking up a little bit. Like, wait, what'd you say about David? Right? And Jesus says, no, this is your boy. Check out what he says in verse 26. It says, David went into the house of God during the days when Abiathar was high priest, and he broke the law by eating the sacred loaves of bread that only the priests were allowed to eat. He also gave some to his companions. Jesus said, wait, you're accusing me of working on the Sabbath, and all I'm doing is walking around and eating some food. He says, don't you know what your boy did? Your boy David went into the temple, he went into the house of God, and he ate the loaves of bread, and he gave some to his friends, and he wasn't supposed to do that. And in that story, David and his companions, they're literally about to die. They're about to starve to death. And so obviously, they're going to eat this bread, because if they don't, they're going to perish. And what Jesus is saying is, hey, look, these rules are important, but people are important too. And we put people over policies. In the same way, David sort of overrided the rule because his life depended on it, right? It's not necessarily about the rules. It's always about the people. And he's pushing them to this point right here. Check this out. The Sabbath was made to meet the needs of people and not people to meet the requirements of Sabbath. Number one, God created the Sabbath. Number two, the Sabbath was created for you. Right? When God created the Sabbath, he knows that you are at your best when you experience rest. And so he tells you, hey, take a break. Relax. Take it easy. Find a rhythm and a routine to spend with me and to be restored. But the Pharisees, they've gotten it all wrong. They said, no. This day is a day about me policing the Sabbath and making sure that we hit all of these checkboxes. And making sure that we meet all of the requirements of this day. And Jesus is like, man, chill, you've got it all wrong. This day is for you. This day is for you to rest and to be restored. And they've gotten it all out of whack. It says this in Psalms chapter 137, verse 2. It says, it is useless for you to work so hard from early morning until late at night, anxiously waiting for food to eat, for God gives rest to his loved ones. So here's the thing. If God has created the Sabbath, and the Sabbath was created for you, and you and I both, we are exhausted. Like, I am tired. You are tired. We got bags under our eyes. And we have no other option but to keep going. But here, we get offered this break, right? This day of rest, this Sabbath. The question is, why don't we take it? Like, why don't we take God up on his offer? Why do we keep working instead of relaxing? Why do we keep pushing forward when we can take a break? And I don't know the answer to that question for you, but I think I know what it is in my personal life. It's one word, and the answer is pride. Because I can do it all. I don't need anybody else. I got it. It's me. I can handle it. I can do everything. I don't need him. I don't need you. I don't need us. I got it. I can handle all of these problems, and I can do it solo dolo. And the problem with that is that I'm not designed to do that. And you're not designed to do that. Like, yes, it is a good thing to be able to stomach some of that stuff, to be able to carry a heavy load, especially at a certain season when you are helping other people or maybe helping your family. Like, it can be a good thing that you can take on more than you would normally take on. That's not necessarily a bad thing, but it's only temporary. Because the longer that you do it, eventually you'll be like Corbin and driving the car of your life until you just can't drive anymore, and you fall asleep, and you go somewhere where you don't necessarily want to go. Which brings me to my third point. If you don't take a Sabbath, the Sabbath will take you. If you don't take a Sabbath, the Sabbath will take you. Listen, you are a human being. And you were not created, you were not designed to be a machine where you just go, nonstop. And if you don't give your body a break, your body will take a break whether you want one or not. You know, last December we do this thing. We always say this. We always say the best part about Canvas is being on the team. And what we mean by that is like, hey, it's one thing to come to church, but it's another thing to be a part of the church, right? To show up and get behind the scenes and to serve and to put other people before yourself and all throughout the week to help. And we try to reward our people who are on the team, and we try to do fun things that we don't offer up to you, right? So like we have leagues, right? We have sports leagues, and only people on the team can join that. At least 2 or 3 times a year, we try to do fun events that are only team members, only volunteers get invited to that. And if you're like, man, I'm mad that I didn't get invited to this, well, join the team, right? And so last year, in fact, this is just a little commercial ad. This Friday, we are doing something just for team members. So if you're a volunteer and you haven't heard about it, you need to come talk to me. This Friday is going to be really, really cool. You should definitely sign up, and if you should have gotten a link for that. But if you haven't and you volunteer on a regular basis, come talk to me. I want to invite you. But last year, we were doing this thing for just our volunteers, and we were doing a Christmas family feud. We fed everyone dinner, and we split into teams, and we did this whole game show. It was cheesy, but it was a lot of fun, and we had a lot of laughs. I hosted the game show, and what people didn't realize is that the week before, dude, I had been going nonstop. I'm talking like 3 or 4 hours of sleep every night for 3 or 4 nights. And from the very beginning of the day to the very end of the day, I had just been going. If it wasn't work, it was a meeting. If it wasn't a meeting, it was kids, or it was, housework, or whatever it is. And I never stopped and never slowed down. And so when we got to the actual night of Family Feud, we had a good time until it was all over. And I just felt terrible. And I had to come to my wife. And I said, hey, I'm sorry, but I don't know what's wrong with me, but something is wrong with me. I was like, I can barely stand here. I don't know what's going on, but I think I'm about to die. And my wife said, hey, don't worry about it. You need to go home and you just go to bed. And so I got in my car and I drove home, and I had to leave my team hanging. They had to clean up everything. They had to take care of everything. I had to leave everybody on their own while I went. And I passed out for 24 hours. And I slept so hard and so good. And when I woke up, I was totally fine. You see, what I needed was I needed a break. I needed to rest. I needed a Sabbath, and I wasn't taking it. So you know what happened? The Sabbath took me. If you don't give your body a break, if you don't take a Sabbath, your body is going to take a break whether you want one or not. Because you were not designed to be a machine. You are a human being, and you are limited in what you can do. And so this morning, if you're like, hey, I'm at best when I experience rest, and I don't want the Sabbath to take me. I want to control when I take my Sabbath. I want to be intentional on taking this day off. The question is, how do we do this? If you've never had a Sabbath before, because I think the Sabbath is different than just a regular day off. If you've never had a Sabbath before, how do you do it? Well, I think there's 3 things. Number 1, I think that it's important that you prioritize your Sabbath. Look, some of you in here, as you listen to the sermon, you're like, this is good and all, but like, there's no way. Right? Like, I got too much to do. My work is too hard. My job, my career is too much. These kids are too much. There's no way that I can just take a day and do absolutely nothing. I'm going to introduce you to a word. It's a pretty magic, powerful word, okay? The word, it's only 2 letters and it has 1 syllable. The word is no, right? Like, when people ask you to do something, you can look at them and you can say, hey, no. Right? Thank you, but no, thank you. Okay? I want to do this, but no. When your body tells you that you want to do something, you can look at your body and your desires, you can say, hey, no, I'm not going to do that. And when you say no, you actually say yes to other things. Like, some of you in here, you own a business or you're trying to start a company or whatever it is. Did you know that you're in control of that schedule? And you can say no to working 7 days a week. And you can say, hey, I want to work 6 days a week, and I want to take a day and just rest. I want to take a day and just have a Sabbath. For you with small kids and you stay at home all day, you can't say no to them. I'm pretty sure that's neglect. But you know what you can say no to, right? You can't say no to laundry or no to dishes or cleaning your house spotless every single day. Like, you can have one day where you say, you know what, I'm going to let things just be and I'm going to enjoy the Sabbath. If you're a person who's consciously, just all the time, anxious and all the time panicking, you know what you can do? You can say no to your phone. You don't have to watch the news and all the stories and the TikToks and the Instagrams. You can literally put your phone down. And when you do that, you are saying yes, and you are saying, I am prioritizing my Sabbath. Now, I just want to be clear, what I don't want you to do today is I don't want you to leave and call your team leader and be like, hey, no, I'm never serving again, and hang up, right? That's not what we're talking about. We're not saying no to good things. We want you to keep serving. We want you to keep connecting. We want you to keep giving yourself. We're saying no to things that are negative in our life, that pull us away from God. And when we say no to these things, we say yes to prioritizing and spending time with God. I was just talking to somebody a few months ago, and they were like, man, I'm in this really bad, this really toxic relationship, and if I could just get rid of this relationship, if I could just say no to this, man, I would have so much time to spend at Canvas and to spend at church and to spend time serving other people, and I desperately want to do it, but this is one thing. And I was like, hey, you know, you have the power to say no. When you say no, you prioritize a Sabbath. The second thing is I want you to plan your Sabbath. Okay? Don't just go in with no plan, but actually have something that you know you want to do, that you know is going to bring you life. And this is not a legalistic way. I'm not trying to give you a million rules and regulations. This is something that's going to look different for every single person. Like, my Sabbath is going to look different than your Sabbath. My Sabbath is I'm going to go to bed early and I'm going to wake up even earlier. And I'm going to go on a bike ride, or I'm going to go on a run. And I'm going to read, and I'm going to journal, I'm going to read my Bible, I might go play basketball, I'm going to cook some things, I'm going to smoke some meat and play around with some recipes, I'm going to date my wife, I'm going to hang out with my kids and get ice cream. Like, that's my Sabbath, but your Sabbath might look entirely different. Your Sabbath might mean, hey, you're going to sleep in and not feel guilty about it. Your Sabbath might mean, hey, I'm going to go fishing, or I'm going to go hunting, or I'm going to go get coffee with that friend, or maybe I'm never going to get out of my PJs and I'm never going to leave this house, right? This is your Sabbath. What is going to bring you rest? What is going to bring you life? You have to prioritize it. You have to plan it. But then the most important thing, the whole point of a Sabbath, is you have to connect with Jesus. You have to connect with God. If you spend your entire Sabbath sitting on the couch watching Netflix, you did not Sabbath. You sat on the couch all day and you watched Netflix. Right? The whole point of a Sabbath is connecting and being with God and reconnecting and being restored and being refreshed by Him. And so when you Sabbath, make sure that you're intentional about this time that you spend with God. Make sure that you do read your Bible. Go on a prayer walk, or maybe journal and write some thoughts down for God. Maybe, this is really cool, listen to Christian music all day long. Right? Listen to Jesus music, listen to worship music all day long, and don't listen to anything else. Don't watch anything else, and let that be your Sabbath. It's so important for you to connect with God on your Sabbath. And when you do, you will wake up the next day and be way better off than you would if you try to just power through and skip that day off. Because you are at your best when you experience rest. I saw a video, and I'll close with this. I saw a video not long ago, and I know I'm going to sound dumb. I don't care. The first service laughed at me, whatever. Did you guys know that whales are mammals? I did not know that, right? I know. I was like, what? Whales are fish. No, they're mammals. I didn't know that. Didn't really pay attention in school. And I saw this video, and it said that whales are mammals. And did you know that whales can, like it's possible for them to drown? I was like, no way, dude. I thought that they just loved water and they lived in water, right? No, they're mammals and they breathe air. And because they live in the ocean, right, all around them, they live in kind of like this environment that's almost like hazardous to their health because they don't breathe water, they breathe air. They can go about their business, but it's so important for them to come back up to the surface and to breathe some air. And once they breathe air, they can dive back down into the deep. But the problem is, sometimes whales, they go too deep, they go too far, they go too long without coming back up and getting air, and as a result, they will literally drown. And I think the same is true for me and you. As followers of Jesus, we are in this world, but we are not of this world. This world is not our home. And if we can go too far and too long in a world full of sin and temptation and death and decay and evil, and it will literally kill us. It will literally take our life. And we will forget who God is. But it's so important for us to say, you know what, in the midst of all of this, I'm going to take a break and I'm going to go get a breath of fresh air. And I'm going to reconnect with God, and I'm going to remember who I am. I'm going to remember who He is. And I am going to experience rest because you are your best when you experience rest. Let's pray. God, we thank you that you command us to take a day off. We thank you that you know us, you created us, and you know that we're not machines. You know that we are not these people who can just go on constantly. But God, you command us and you love us and you give us some time to rest. You give us opportunities to rest. I pray that today, when we leave here, God, we trust you instead of us. And we don't let our pride get in the way, but instead we say, God, I'm going to take you at your word, and I know I need to rest, so I'm going to do it. And I pray that us as a church and us as individuals, that we can practice a Sabbath this week, that we can calendar time and be intentional and prioritize a day where we just reconnect and rest with you. And God, I pray that you would bless us for it. And I pray that as a result, the rest of our week gets tremendously better because we've chosen to put you first instead of everything else in front of you. We love you and we serve you. And it's in Jesus' name we pray.